want it enough to get uncomfortable? Do you want what you're after bad enough to go the extra mile?
My name is Bobby Jones, also known as Mr. Brightside, and you are listening to the Extra Mile Podcast. Welcome into episode 14 of the Extra Mile Podcast. Guys, my name is Bobby Jones, also known as Mr. Brightside, and I'm the host here. To my left and to your right is a really cool individual. This girl, Taylor, and on Instagram, it's The Fabulous Journey. You guys got to check her out over there as well. She's got a cool story. I seen her on Gary Vee and immediately connected with her when she got the opportunity to ask a question. We're blessed to have her here today, and I'm going to let her tell you guys a little bit about her, and then we're going to get into some cool conversations about self-love and self-confidence. So let's rock.
Love it.
Yes.
That's such a loaded question.
I know.
Tell them about you.
Yeah, I know, right?
Like, where do you even begin with that? Cliff notes, let's see. So, went to college for fashion design, got a degree, loved every minute of it. Went back to school for another degree in business, and can't say I actually used that at all, ever.
That's funny, because that's probably the most usable degree, right?
That's what people think. They're like, oh, I want to be in business. I'm going to get a business degree. Literally couldn't tell you one thing from my business degree that I actually utilized.
Yeah, I think it's more experience-based stuff, like
100%.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I grew up with two entrepreneur parents.
What did they do?
So my mom owns now like the #1 wedding venue catering company in the Western New York area.
Oh shit.
So grew up in that company, learned a ton, just growing up and having business parents. My dad owns his own company with his brothers. Don't really know too much about it, I'm gonna be honest.
Oh shit, top
secret. Something with like industrial air filtration engineering stuff.
Super exciting.
Like he just worked on a project with like space rocket ships and stuff.
Oh really?
So he does cool dude stuff, but I couldn't tell you too much about it. And yeah, so I guess the last 4 years, how long ago was 2017? Whenever that was, kind of had like a pivot in my life. So I graduated college in 2016 and fell kind of into what most people know as the whole conversation that I had with Gary. And college was dope because I got to study abroad and I got to learn things I wanted. I made tons of friends. I networked around the world. And then after college, I went back home, which wasn't the plan. Couldn't afford to live in the big city where my career would have been kind of a thing. And just fell into this like depressive stuck rut. I've always been super like hustle focused, super hardcore work. Like work ethic was never a question for me. And then after college, something happened where I just went back home and my summer job of working for my mom's business turned into fall and then winter. And then the next year rolled around and it was spring and I was still there. And I'm like, this isn't what I wanted to do. Yeah. So for me, I just was in that not so good place, but also didn't know what the heck to do to get out of it kind of a thing. That led into, I was sitting in my couch watching TV, I'm not going to lie, and I'm pretty sure I actually did just finish like some episode of The Kardashians. I'm not even going to front. So
real quick, I'm gonna let you finish, but I just want to say that I'm even more excited about the conversation we're gonna have today when you talk about like this depressive state that you were in.
Oh yeah.
Because like that's the journey that I want to see most people take and get out of that spot into where you are today.
Yeah.
So all right, keep going.
It's a very interesting journey.
You just finished up watching Kim, Chloe, and them.
Sure did. And then I was also scrolling on my phone, so I wasn't really paying attention to much of anything. Saw Gary Vee was live. Decided to jump on, watch it while it was live. First time I ever saw him live. I'd only been following for maybe a month or two, so he was still fresh for me.
She's so lucky.
And then I'm telling you, this whole process of how it happened, wild. Yeah. And even more wild was probably the week prior. I had just finished watching a Gary video right before bed. I'm just laying in my bed, staring at my ceiling. It's pitch black in my room, and I was just saying to myself, I'm like, just get like 10 minutes of Gary's time, my entire life would change.
For real.
And
I
it
think
was just
a lot
like
of people think that too, by the way.
A genuine thought comment I had. So then the next week when I saw him live, didn't think anything of it. Saw all the comments, flowing up in the live stream kind of a thing. And I'm like, oh, everyone's putting their phone numbers in. This is how you get on the show. So I'm like, okay, I'll do it. Put my number in, watch it scroll up, disappear. Didn't think twice about it. And then maybe a couple minutes after that, YouTube crashed. So I was like, oh, it's over. Cool. Back to watching TV.
Shit.
Couple minutes after that, got a phone call from 212 area code, which is New York City.
Damn.
And at the time, I was getting tons of telemarketer calls.
Yeah.
Didn't expect it to be him.
So did you almost not answer
I
it?
almost didn't answer it.
Holy
Literally
shit.
because I was so sick of the telemarketer calls.
Right.
I ended up answering it, and then that's kind of where that led.
Yeah. Now, did you have a question ready though? Because like, I mean,
No.
it just seemed like, yeah, but that's okay.
Yeah.
Like, I think that was authentic. It was so interesting to watch him like respond to you because I felt like he was like intrigued also. Like he was like, I want to watch this. Like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? I want to see this play out. And so that was kind of neat.
Yeah, the whole thing was so authentic because I literally had zero idea of what I would ever ask him, kind of a thing.
Right.
Because I didn't actually expect
I know.
to get picked.
Right.
Like, doop, gone, phone number, comment, whatever.
Right.
So after that, I was just so amped up that I had so much adrenaline going at me. I actually blacked out. I don't remember the entire conversation. I had to
Holy
wait
shit.
for D-Rock to repost it like 4 days later.
How many times have you watched it since then?
Maybe 5 total.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember rewatching it twice almost immediately because the first time I was just like, I did not just say that.
Mm-hmm.
And then the second time was more so I took some notes of what he said.
Yeah.
And then I started to get a following from it and literally thousands of DMs
Yeah.
just mostly saying the words, I'm watching you, and then eyeball emojis.
That's kind of creepy.
Yeah, at first it was creepy, and then it got really intimidating, and then I kind of got to the flip of the switch moment where I'm like, sink or swim, let's go, let's try to make something of this. So that's what ended up happening, and spent like the last 4 years on a crazy journey of self-love, self-confidence, personal development, just trying everything because it was one of the things that, you know, Gary had recommended anyway. Since I didn't know what I wanted to do, I had so many ideas and interests and passions and things
Right.
and dreams, and it was just I needed to try as much as I could, as fast as I could, to condense the time frame of what do I like to do, what am I good at, and how do I do that now, and then I can pivot with whatever ends up happening after that.
Yeah.
So that's kind of been the last 4 years of my life, is lots of investing in myself.
That's good though. Like it's been so cool to watch. It's funny, like you said, like all these different things though, because when I was at the keynote with Gary and I had an opportunity to speak to him, there was a lady who went before me, like just in one of the Q&A lines, and she went up there and said to Gary, she's like, I was doing this and that, and I really loved all these things, but I fell out of love with them. And he's like, you didn't love them. And she was like, but I did though. And he's like, no, you hooked up with them. And so
love that.
I was like, dude, and the whole freaking state or the whole audience just lost it because it was perfect. It's like,
Wow.
it's exactly that. Like, if you love it, you're going to know, it's going to stay with you. And a part of it, like maybe it evolves, maybe it goes into something else. But it was kind of interesting how you were talking about like, I wanted to do all these things, but if it's about you, then by all means, go do them. Mm-hmm. Go do them. And I've been watching you do that, and it's been awesome. So right now, like I've seen you go like all over the place. Right now, where's like your favorite place that you've traveled to so far?
Oh, that's so hard. I think traveling is probably the number one thing in this planet that I'm obsessed with.
Yeah.
Like, I could just keep traveling forever and never get bored.
Yeah, because you were in Bali,
Yeah.
right? And my cousin ended up there. While you were there,
way.
I messaged you, and you were like, oh, she's got a lot coming at her. And when you said that, I was like, wait, is there like a storm coming? Should I be worried? And you're like, no, it's
No,
like
no.
she's going to have a lot of energy coming.
Yeah, Bali was insane.
Yeah.
It's so hard because there's so many places that I've visited briefly, but there's also so many places that I've been to for long, extended periods of time.
Right.
Bali was one of them. I lived in Italy because I studied abroad.
Oh, that's right,
So
okay.
that was insane and incredible, and I loved it. I lived in Australia because I
Really?
studied abroad
I had
there.
I had a friend from Scotland who, like at 18, just packed her bags and went to
I wish I had the
Australia.
balls to do that. Why didn't
That's
I
what we're going to
do
talk
that?
about. Like,
Yes.
why don't we have the courage to do that stuff,
Literally.
right? But
But-
it seems like you do now, though. Like, do you think
Yeah.
that you could now, like, just pack a bag and just go, right? I mean, that's kind of what you did today. You
Yeah.
just, like, you're like,
It's interesting because in some aspects of my life, 100%, like it's
Yeah.
so easy for me to just pick up and go. That's kind of how my study abroad went too,
Right.
was, I think I'm going to want to study abroad. So I went to the office, filled all the stuff, got approved, whatever. And then I literally packed a bag and was going to live with a family that I had no idea who they were, and was going to be there for like 6 months.
That's awesome.
So yeah, that's super easy for me. Yeah. But then you talk about backpacking, like 100% would do it. But again, my brain still has those really old, like, limiting beliefs financially. Like, how am I going to do that? I don't have 100% remote income yet. So for me, that's been the only string after all of the development that I've done personally. It's the only string that I still haven't grasped, and it's the only thing that makes me hesitate even a little bit.
Yeah.
But I think in the last 6 months, I've really taken a hold on that one. So nice. I'm going to give it a couple more months. 2021 is definitely probably going to be more on that wavelength. Because I have so many friends who are doing it at this point. Yeah. And they've started, you know, their hustles and their businesses. And I think they had a better idea of what they wanted to do before I got to that point. Okay. So they're just a little ahead of me on that game. And now I'm like, damn it, now I gotta go.
Yeah, now you gotta go hard.
There's no reason for me not to at this point. That's but yeah, so 100% I would do it in a heartbeat. But I couldn't even tell you my favorite place because there's so many. I've just gone to a lot.
I want to travel more. When I was growing up, I never even imagined I'd ever leave the country. And now that I have, I'm like, I don't want to stop leaving the country. Like, I love my home. It's kind of bizarre because like I'm always like super attracted to the city. Okay. Like every city, like Rome, like to New York, to like
so pretty.
I love them all. Like I love being in the hustle and bustle of it all, but this is also my home. Like this is still my roots. So like I still will always like live here, reside here, but I want to travel the world.
Definitely should.
So it's super crazy. I want to get into it. We talked about, having this conversation around self-confidence and self-love, and part of the reason that I've been able to conquer the stuff that I'm conquering and accomplishing today is because I had a breakthrough. Like I had a breakthrough moment where I realized that everything that I thought that was holding me back, like all the limits that I thought and had placed on myself, once I had broken through those just one time, I was like, wait, does that mean that that's also possible? And I've thought this whole time that's not possible. And does that mean that now that I'm here, that that's possible? So now, like, to me, like, the sky's the limit, but it's amazing how before I never thought any of this was possible at all. And I've seen so many times where people like almost like DIY bully themselves into thinking that they're not good enough and that they can't do it. And so I want to go back to like that moment where you were, because depression is something that I can't like really get into besides like the emotion part of it. Like I know what it feels like to be depressed. I don't know what it feels like to be diagnosed as depressed, right? So like with depression. So like for people who are going through like the insecurities and the depression that you were going through fresh out of college and like determining where you're going to go. How did you go? Like, what was the moment, the second that you just realized that you were going to launch? And how did that really come to be?
Oh, it's so tough because that was a mild version, I would say, of like the depression, the rut, whatever people want to call it, kind of a thing. When I was younger, I definitely hardcore like wanted to die. So like it's interesting when I look at it later in life how it was when I was, after college and everything. But I think it's interesting because now I have the education and knowledge behind why all of that kind of happens from like a psychology standpoint. So there's a couple of things that kind of changed it all. I think the massive amount of momentum and just accountability on such a high level was the trigger. It's all I needed to go.
Right. You knew so many people were watching.
Yes. Yeah. So
with emoji eyes.
Literally. So the first thing, the piece of that was leverage. Yeah. I had to get some sort of leverage behind me to get me to just completely change my state and move into a space of just complete habit breaking what I had been doing the last however long. So that leverage of that call with Gary Vee was the thing that actually projected me in a totally different direction. After that, it was mostly...
Were you like almost angry with yourself afterwards once you had the realization? You're like,
I was angry with myself before I even talked with Gary.
but
like
yeah. You know, we kind of talked before we started rolling about like knowing what he would say if you asked him certain questions today. Like the same thing. You're like, gosh, I should have known that or this and that. Yeah.
And it's funny because most of the stuff that he was telling me, my mom had told me growing up.
We don't want to hear it from the people close to us, though.
That's
it's so
the
crazy. It is so crazy, man, because you can give advice to, and I have kids. I have 2 girls. And, like, I can tell, and they do listen very well to me, but, you know.
Yeah, it's different.
Right. And I see it with coach to athletes that are father and son or mother and daughter. And they get on the team and they get on the field, and it's a different dynamic, really.
Yeah.
And it's not as received as it is with some of the other players from the coach who's also a parent.
I think it's something to do with the people that you respect or people that you look up to, like those idol kind of people, or the ones who maybe like are more celeb status. I think I don't know the word, like the grandness of the fact that it was Gary Vee, and I had respected him so much, still do. But I think that was the difference, because my parents are successful. They are people that I should accept advice from. But I think the fact that they are my parents was the piece that's like, yeah, I've heard that before, or whatever kind of a thing. But to hear it in a totally different tone, a different form, a different person, a stranger, he doesn't know me or my life, it hit different.
Did you have people around you that maybe promoted, like not intentionally, but like maybe might have promoted some of your like self-limiting beliefs at all? So let me explain.
Explain.
When I went to start my business, right, like my father-in-law came to me and was like, you shouldn't do this. This is too risky, right? And his intention was right. Like his intention was good.
Yeah, it came from the heart.
Right. But I look back on that moment and I'm like, man, if I'd have let him talk me into not doing this, like where would I be today? And so like for me, that happens often, right? Because friends and family, they think they're doing the best for us to say, oh, you know what? No, why don't you stick with the consistent job that you have? Or, you know, don't take this leap. Don't change careers at this point. You know, you want to stay safe, right?
Yeah.
And I'm like, no, that's because you want to stay safe, bro. Like that's you want to stay safe.
Those are their insecurities that they're starting to project onto you.
Now, did you have that at all? Do you think like around you at all? No.
I grew up with parents who basically were like, do whatever you want. Like,
do you have brothers, sisters?
I have one older sister, and I think growing up it was mostly like, whatever you want to do, you can do it, you can work for it, because that was my mom's mentality. My mom started her whole business basically because someone in the family told her, oh, you can't do that because you're a woman.
Right.
And she's like, fuck you, I'm gonna do it. No experience in anything of her industry.
Dude, that's the courage that I want people to have. Like, I tell, you know, it's so frustrating now, especially watching like the people that have like the same want and desire to start a business or do something that's just going to launch their family or whatever into the right direction. And I just watch them, you know, wait for the stars to align, for things to be perfect for them to launch. And, you know, it's tough because we owe it to ourselves to take that leap. But kind of going back to what we intended to talk about in the first place, like I don't feel like people they don't feel like they owe it to themselves until they truly love themselves unconditionally, right? Like people that go to the gym and work out, like they go through that pain because they want to feel better because they owe it to themselves. Like they don't eat the slice of pizza because they love themselves and they owe it to themselves not to eat that slice of pizza.
They love themselves so much that they have to become the best version of themselves because that's what they deserve.
Exactly.
Yeah, no, exactly. I totally 100% couldn't agree with that more.
Yeah. So I always think that there's a few things that I think go hand in hand with self-love. One is gratitude, right? Like I feel like my self-love came from an extreme amount of gratitude, a moment like that was kind of a miracle for me. And because of that, I'm like, okay, let's go. Like, and I never turned back. Most people don't experience that breakthrough, right? And sometimes the people that experience that breakthrough, it's also a major setback, and it can have the opposite effect on them. And then the other thing is self-discipline, right? Like when you have an extreme amount of self-love, then you're also like, okay, I need to put in the work that goes along with this because I want more, right? Do you agree with that? What do you think? What are your thoughts on that?
I do. I think the triggers for why people don't give themselves more self-love might be different. But I think once you get there, all the pieces to the puzzle kind of come together. So for me, it was mostly just total horrible self-esteem. Not in anything that I wanted to do. It was more like physical self-esteem. Like growing up, thought I was extremely fat, thought I was ugly, thought I was this, thought I was that, whatever. And that was a huge damper, I think, and for me to move forward in a more self-love kind of area. I had gone through a horrible breakup. I was in a long-term relationship, so that kind of went.
Do you think that did? I don't mean to pry.
No,
but
I'm open.
Did that have anything to do with like your self-esteem? Was there like any kind of?
I think for me, it was more just like devastating at the time, because I had been with the guy for like 5 years, and like that was the dude I was marrying, like had rings, committed, like my family was his family, like very integrated kind of a thing. But I think for me, it was less of me. Like I know 100% it wasn't me.
Right.
But I think there was the part of me that was always thinking, well, what could I have done different? What could I have changed about me? What if at the time I thought I was super fat and obese. So I'm like, what if I just lost like 20 pounds? Maybe he'd want me back kind of a thing. And so it was like that kind of stuff that was going through my head. It was like, well, what does she have that I don't? Because he cheated on me.
Oh,
so it was like a lot of different things. But I think for me, that was always number one of why I could never give myself that kind of confidence or self-love or any of that. Talk about business, anything creative, like got confidence up the ass. But talk about like personally, like the person, never had it in my entire life, ever. Like growing up, seeing all my friends and stuff, I was athletic. Like my friends were twigs because the maturity part didn't catch up yet. I matured pretty early, so like hips and boobs kind of a thing doesn't make you fat. So for me, back then, that was my truth. And then I think it wasn't until probably after the Gary Vee thing where I just started to get hit up. And I had never really experienced that in my life. After I was single, I had some like old high school kind of people like hit me up, and I was just kind of like, fuck you, you didn't like me then, you're not gonna like me now. Like, you don't deserve me then, you don't deserve me now. So that's kind of the mentality I had then, but it wasn't until I started to, I guess, grow more in just finding my path that maybe the confidence kind of exuded out of that, which the personality just became more in alignment with who I was always supposed to be. And that was the beautiful thing. So
it's authentic. When we watch you on camera, and I know your Instagram followers are thinking the same thing, but like when we watch you on camera, this is like authentic. You know when somebody gets on camera and they're just being the version that
they're just totally bullshitting, pretending
and
to
they're
be
being the
someone
version that they think the people on the other end of the camera want them to be, but not being true to themselves. And that's like the frustrating thing to watch. But like that's one of the things that like when you get on camera, like it's definitely you. It's authentic. It's you. It's true. And it's awesome 100%. To watch.
And that definitely happened after the Gary blow up kind of a thing. And I think I mostly took the perspective on that of I can't be anything other than truthful to myself, or else someone's going to call me out on that 100%. Kind of a thing. And I didn't want that backlash because I wasn't about to ruin the opportunity I was just given that I didn't even expect or ask for kind of a thing. So I think because of that, that's where I stopped listening to other people's opinions. I stopped caring what other people thought about me. I literally dove like head first into the entire area of focus on you and nothing else matters. And not even from, because there's some comments that I've gotten from like an egotistical kind of perspective, like, don't be selfish, like you need to share what you got, like blah, blah, blah. So
remember though, that's their shit. Every 100%. Single time, And that's what I was going to say, like, going back to the relationship and that guy doing what he did, that was his shit. That didn't have nothing to do with like anything that you fell short on. There's a book called, have you ever read The Four Agreements?
Oh, Oh, yes. Luis or something.
Yeah.
Miguel.
Ruiz, yeah. It's freaking great.
Yeah.
And he says, don't take things personally, right?
Yeah.
Like, and I know that's simple to say and kind of cheesy,
Mm-hmm.
like kind of going back to what, like your mom was like, oh, you can do anything if you just work for it, right? Like I heard my school teachers tell me that same shit.
Yeah.
But I didn't believe them. Like I was like, wait, you mean to tell me I could be like the Queen of England? That doesn't make any sense. But,
Yep.
but like today I see the reality with that, but don't take things personal. In the 4 agreements, like it was a groundbreaking moment for me when I was like reading that, because I was like, I expected so much from people because I was doing so much for other people, and like they wouldn't do back for me. And so one day I even posted it, and my friend Eric corrected me because I posted on Facebook or something or some other platform, and I was like, don't expect other people to do for you what you're willing to do for them. And then he commented and said, don't expect. And I was like, damn.
Yeah.
I was like, and
Literally.
that's it. So like, with this, it's gonna always be naysayers. Like people are gonna be like, come on,
100%.
why are you so eager? Man, I'm in that place where you're at. Like, I do not give a fuck what people think about me. Now, there's a thin line that we have to understand. I think that we have to know where like good feedback, right?
Yep.
Like me saying so much in my podcast, right? Like somebody could say, hey, listen, this might help you not say so much.
Yeah.
Or somebody can get on there and say, you say too much, I'm not listening to this. Like one's somebody that's just hating and I'm not going to pay much attention to. The other person I'll give some attention to.
The difference is one's judgment,
right,
which comes from a lacking kind of place. Like, what don't I have that needs improvement? Oh, I shouldn't be doing that kind of a thing. It comes from a negative connotation.
Yes,
The other one is
solution-based.
How do I become the best version of myself?
Yeah.
Oh, I could improve speaking and stop saying as much, which again, perspective based. So it really doesn't matter at all.
I'm still going to do it. Sorry, guys.
I probably say like way too much. I just don't give a fuck.
Yeah.
Like,
that's it, and like that's the place. Like we were talking about my buddy Zach too, and like he can go forth and do all this stuff because there's going to be like you know what, Taylor, on some real shit.
Yeah.
All right.
Let's go.
I assume people are talking shit. like I'm almost banking on the idea that somebody's saying negative things about me, so that way like I'm just gonna assume that that's happening. I'll move forth with my actions anyway. Yeah. Like, I'm almost banking on the fact that, like, people are betting against me so that I can grind hard and keep going. Is that weird?
I don't think it's weird. I think it kind of is to the point of where people have, like, the worst case scenario kind of thing, like, always in the back of their head. Like, oh, if you already know the worst thing that'll happen, when it comes, it's not going to faze you.
Yeah.
So.
Well, you see the name of my company is Brightside, right?
Yeah.
So I go by Mr. Brightside. Somebody else, like, dubbed me that at one point, and I just ran with it. But,
I love it.
Yeah. Well, the reason is, like legitimately all, like, from the moment that I had, like, my little, like, breakthrough, I, like, would look at any scenario and I'd be like, it could always be worse. I would look at, and some people are like, well, that's kind of a negative approach because you're immediately imagining the worst situation. I'm like, yeah, but I'm grateful for the current reality.
Yeah.
So to me, that's what worked. So for me, I'm like, okay, guess what? I know you're out there talking shit.
And that's the difference. For everyone, it's something different.
Yeah.
Like, for you, if that works because it immediately puts you into gratitude, then the intention behind it was everything that you needed it to be to get you where you wanted to go,
100%.
kind of a thing. For other people, for me, I think I take language into such a high priority thing that any sort of negative connotation, like, I don't even want to think of the worst case scenario. I'll think about it for a brief second because I think I need to be aware of it from that more business-minded perspective. But once I thought about it for a second, it leaves my mind anyway. Yeah. And then I go full positive because for me, I think that I can manifest anything that I think about, anything I talk about, anything I say. So over the years, I've become very conscious of my language and thoughts. So I don't even think negatively anymore. Right. And if I do, I immediately know it's because it's going fear-based. And then I try to reverse it if, oh, shit, what am I supposed to be learning right now? Because this isn't, I don't like this. What do I need to work on? Right. And I think that's just more of my personal development brain. But who gives a shit? If it works for you and it's in a positive light and turns you to gratitude, that's perfect.
100%. Yeah, I always think of Gary's example. You know how he always talks about how he should have invested in, what was it, like Uber? And he's like, yes, I could have been this much richer. Yeah. But I could be given a keynote over in China and walking across the street and get hit by a freaking bridge, or a
Yep.
bus. And I'm like, holy shit, like that's kind of like what I do. I'm like, okay, this
Yep.
could have been worse. We're doing okay. We're going to move forward. I want to go like, so, all right, I told you I have 2 daughters, right?
Yeah.
So my oldest is 16, my youngest is 11.
Okay.
And so for me, like, I know I've like put a lot of thought into like, you know, how they're impacted versus how I was impacted, and how like kind of guys versus girls. So lately I've been putting a lot of thought into the psychology of like let's face it, like boys flirting, right, at that age level is, what is it? It's picking on the girl, right? It's like they're teasing,
yeah.
picking on them, like. And so we did a lot to like kind of discuss this and think about this, but we kind of came to this theory. This is just my like theory and idea. Like, I feel like when we're attracted to a girl, right? Like we, especially as young kids or young boys or whatever, we place them up on a pedestal, right? Because we're attracted to them. But to have a conversation with them and be comfortable with them, now we have to break them down because we don't have the confidence to step up onto the pedestal. And so it's really interesting. And I might be wrong. Maybe I'm totally off base here. But I feel like...
You might be onto something.
I think so. And so the other side of that, right, is like... And I hate this because I'll tell you, I was actually guilty of it early in our relationship. My wife and I were together at 16 and 15.
Wow.
Right? And so, like... I don't know
Sounds
how
like my
familiar you are
parents.
with my story, but she
I'm
went,
not. I wanna
went
know
through
more.
the ringer with me for a while. And so... phenomenal chick, love her to death. But we, like, in the beginning, like, I wasn't in that place of self-love myself, right? So like I was working off of the information I had and the relationships that I seen and monitored and watched. And so not making excuses, because you know you should know better, but like I became a controlling person, right? And I feel like men want to be controlling in some instinctive nature of ours.
It's like the masculine energy becomes dominant,
Right.
where you need to be the
100%.
person who just like protects, provides, and you
Yes.
know, all that stuff.
So for the women listening, understand this, because like
Yeah.
it can hurt and it sucks. But guys, like, so in order to be in control, right, we have to like be superior, right? And so we like, even through subconscious behavior sometimes, can demean the woman or like not appreciate her as much. And so what ends up happening is like we try to break them down. And I've seen it a lot. Like obviously there are very healthy relationships out there, and hats off to those guys, but I've seen it a ton where a guy's got to be in control and therefore has to break down the woman. And like, and that's where I see like with daughters at home, I'm like trying to be super aware of all this stuff so that I can, you know, kind of inform them and prepare them and protect them.
Yeah.
We put a sign on my daughter's wall years ago, and it said, "Never let a fool kiss you, and never let a kiss fool you."
I love that. I love that you're teaching your daughters this and having these conversations, because growing up with just one sister for me, and then in my household, boys kissing, flirting, sex, like none of that was ever talked about. And my parents almost sound similar to you. They were high school sweethearts. They knew each other, you know, from grade school, whatever. And they've been married now for, I don't know, 30 years-ish.
Yeah.
So they never really experienced dating, because
Right.
it was, you know, teenager, married, college, there you are. So growing up, for me at least, I didn't have a brother. I didn't have a lot of guy friends. So to even understand what was going through a dude's mind, clueless. So when I heard something from a dude, or like, you know, the teasing or like all that kind of stuff, I was like, you're a fucking asshole.
Right.
So
Exactly.
for me, I had zero like even awareness, knowledge, education about any of it. And it's so interesting, because the last couple of years I've just gotten super deep into it, just from going to Tony Robbins events and personal development. You kind of just go down the rabbit holes of things.
Right.
And the whole masculine, feminine energy, and just like the difference between the brain structure between men and women is crazy different. And from that, you know, masculine male side, it's so interesting, because this is also like a Tony Robbins thing too, but it's not even the need for like control per se. It's the need to be that person, and not even from a negative ego standpoint either. It's like the masculine energy needs to be the one who actually protects, provides, and is like, you know, I'm the warrior kind of a thing. Like primal kind of instinct that always exists. It's always there. And it's so interesting because I love getting into this topic. But again, it's not the ego, but also from that standpoint, I think it triggers women or feminine energy to go polar opposite. Like if they feel like they're being attacked or controlled or some aspect in not a positive light, like the intention of it isn't how it's being come offing as, we turn opposite and we go masculine, which creates the attacking back or the fighting back or the
and you guys are better
insecurity
at it than we are.
And stuff. Yeah, so it's interesting how when you're just reacting and not even aware of what's even going on kind of a thing, it flips people into their opposite, you know, dominant kind of energies, which is why there's so many issues these days. And for me, I figured out that that was actually what I was doing. My relationship, the one that had ended bad, was because he had an ego complex, because he felt inferior to me because I was doing so well in college with my career and the internships I was getting and stuff. It's like a little fruit fly.
I know. Where's that coming from?
But I ended up, after years later learning about all this, that's why my relationship ended, because the jealousy and the ego couldn't allow him to be okay that I was doing good. It was just that male something instinct that needed to be the one, like he wanted to provide, and that was dope, but like at the time it wasn't really happening.
Right, yeah.
And that's kind of the crumbling of the relationship that happened. But it pushed me into my masculine too, which
put you on offense.
It wasn't good. And I lived in my masculine energy for years, just seeing my mom be a fucking bulldozer in business, which is dope, and I love it.
Dude, can I just say something? I feel like women are way better at business than we are. And I listen, I own 2 businesses and I like invest in real estate and I'm killing it. But like, I see women just crush us on multiple ways. There's a book called, Pamela Jett did this book. It was Remarkable Communication Skills. And she talks about the receptors between women and men. And I know I'm guilty of this, and maybe there's exceptions to this, but if I'm in the car, like let's say me and my wife, right, and she wants to have a conversation, she could do that. She could have that conversation with her window down, the music up, cursing out a driver, keeping an eye on the kids in the back, and still hear everything that I'm saying. Me, I'm like, window's got to go up, the radio's got to go off, girls be quiet for 1 second, I want to hear what mom says. Like, because we have, so according to Pamela Jett, and I'm sure there's research that goes with it, but we have only 2 receptors, so we can only like consume and receive 2 forms of like I guess like awareness basically at one time, where women have 7. So
that makes sense to what I had learned as well, because I've read the books by Ellison Armstrong, which is also the relationship kind of stuff that Tony Robbins teaches at his events. And same exact thing. The male brain and the female brain are completely structured different. Men can only focus on one thing at a time. Literally, that's how their brain is wired. Women were wired to be multitaskers. So it's why we're able to do 50 things at once, and it makes us seem like we have these superpowers. But really, it's the receptors, which I didn't know the number.
It's so crazy too, because now, like, especially like with this big entrepreneurial push that, you know, everybody's on, you've got male coaches saying, okay, multitasking isn't a thing. Like, you can only focus on one thing at a time. It's untrue for you guys. But what I will say is, like, I've also seen women who, out of habit of respect, can shut everything off and give somebody the attention. Now, it's not because they can't listen to the other things and receive the other things, but it's because they've
we
seen...
can have a heightened focus on the one thing, but there's also 3-4 other things going on at once that no one's aware of. Like, I might be thinking about, how cool the podcast logo is right here. I keep glancing at, that's what I look like over there. And then I have the topic at hand that we're actually talking about. And then I keep looking, I want to make sure that I look at the cameras. So, and then again, at ADHD on top of that, your brain just wants to explode.
I know a little bit about that.
Yeah. So it's such an interesting topic. I love all that kind of stuff. Yeah. It's so different, though, how and same thing like with you when you were talking about how, you give, and that might also be, that's how you want to receive it too, which probably goes back to the love languages, which is just like receiving gifts and affirmations and things like that. But it could also be, how you give or how you want to receive are always going to be different from usually the person that you're talking to with anyway.
Almost every time. Yeah. And you're right. Like, so have you read the book? We're going to mention all kinds of books today, guys. Have you read the book, The Go-Giver?
No.
Okay, this one's a pretty good one because I'll tell you, like you said, like I've always gone forth with like this mindset of contribution. I don't want to say always, but from the miracle moment for me on, I really tried to, give back and do for the community. But I did that, right, with the way my buddy Eric so cleverly emphasized, without expectation. Like I didn't expect. So I did without any expectation of anything coming back at all.
And totally subconscious. It wasn't even like, or if it was conscious, it wasn't ill-intentioned at least.
Right. Well, in the Go-Giver, they say like, listen, you're going to do without the expectation. The problem is the universe and the energy is going to reward you for it. So eventually, whether you had your hand out or not, you're going to have to put it out to catch what's going to be put in your hand, right?
100%.
And so, but the Go-Giver, one of my breakthrough moments, kind of going back to what you're saying, is like, I always wanted to help, but I never would let anyone help me. So you
were blocking your receiving.
I was breaking a cycle, right? And I in the book, they're like, it's the law of reciprocity or whatever, where, you have to allow people to help you too, because the energy has to continue. Now, in addition to, whatever anybody believes about the energy, also, if a person's offering you help and you say no, well, one day they're going to stop offering the help, right? And one day you might need it. So, it's important to receive that. I'm still bad at that. Like, I'm aware of it now, so I can work on it, but I'm still bad at it. So.
It took me a really long time to start to accept help. And I think it was mostly, again, upbringing. Like, saw my mom just do everything herself. Like, I don't need anybody. I can do it. Like, super strong and everything. So it took me a while to just start accepting help. And again, it's still something I'm working on, too. So it's definitely interesting how we kind of go about different situations and everything and what we're hoping and expecting to get out of it. But then, again, giving from a place of not expecting at all.
Exactly.
It's a totally different kind of a wavelength, I guess you could say.
Yeah, absolutely. I wanted to ask you about this too. So I have a so with like self, and the name of like the self-love and self-confidence that we were talking about, accomplishments, right? Like how little accomplishments, little tasks throughout the day, big accomplishments, how that can work towards someone's self-value. Is that something that you can chat about a little bit? Or
yeah, it's interesting because that's actually been popping up a lot for me on social media lately. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Charlie Rocket, but he had a clip. He was on Logan Paul's podcast recently. I've known of him for years though. And he talked about a thing called winning streak. And every single day he wakes up and he'll go to Starbucks and he'll get a cup of coffee that costs, I don't know, $3-4.
Right.
And he's like, all this happiness in this cup for $3 to $4? Man, I'm on a winning streak. Light turns green, winning streak. Parking spot at the grocery store, front aisle, winning streak. And he was talking about this on the podcast kind of a thing. And it was just starting the day knowing that you're already winning.
Yeah.
And then everything that happens little, very minor, he celebrates it.
Right.
And I've always had trouble celebrating anything that I did, accomplishment-wise, like whatever. Mm-hmm. So for me to hear that total opposite perspective of celebrate the littlest things, it actually energetically creates the momentum towards more manifestation because 100%. You're in the flow of just accepting and receiving, but acknowledging it as well.
Yeah.
It's part of that process too. So it's interesting you bring that up. The winning streak thing that he had just randomly, I don't think he's ever said the words winning streak, like podcast. It just is kind of like a roll off the tongue thing. Could be wrong on that. But after that episode on Logan Paul, it became viral and everyone started getting tattoos and stuff saying winning streak as just that daily reminder to just
that is
celebrate.
You know, we talk about it in sales, like, you know, when the best time to go sell something is right after you just sold something, right? And it's like, you know, the same thing, the momentum, the energy keeps you going. Like, you're on a different level. But yeah, I always try to like think about how like the little accomplishments, as I told you earlier, like I had all these self-limiting beliefs about like what I could accomplish. And then once I accomplished certain things, I'm like, wait, if it was untrue my entire life that I couldn't do this, and it's now I see that I actually can, then what about that over there that I've been thinking about?
Totally, and like, shifts momentum.
But at the same time, just builds my self-value. Like now I feel like I'm worth the energy. Now I feel like I'm worth the investment. I'm worth the time, right? And it goes from like this place of like, I'm worth it to I owe it to myself, right? Like we talked about earlier. Like now I owe it to myself to grind and do these things because I know like I'm capable. I know that the best version of myself would go forth. And so like those little accomplishments, just the self-value, those things I think are really important. Like simple things from like making the bed. The only thing that I will say, and I just want to emphasize for our, you know, our viewers and listeners and wherever you're at watching us talk about this, is like these things have to be yours. Like you can't let somebody give you a to-do list and then you check off the to-do list and think that you're going to feel the same as if you would have created that to-do list. Right? Like, like
it's so true.
We talk about this in goal setting all the time, right? Like, you know, your goal can't be assigned to you. It has to be something that you want, right? So that you can put your passion and energy behind it. The same thing with these little tasks. In order for them to build your self-value and self-worth, they have to be what you want to do. And if there are tasks in there that you don't want to do, get those done first. Brian Tracy has a thing called Eat That Frog. And he says, he says, you know, if the worst thing you had to do every single day was to eat a live frog, right? It's terrible. It sounds horrible, right?
Just cringing at the thought of it.
Yeah. And I don't know if they're like the little frogs, like the tree frogs, or like a bullfrog. I have no idea. But the reality is if you had to do that to stay alive every single day, right? You would do it first thing and get it over with, right? Why would we sit here and watch this thing hop around all day? You know what I mean? So like the reality is like that task, whatever it is, if it's not yours and you don't want to do it and you don't like it, get it done first and get it out the way so you can focus on the things you want to do. Those things are going to give you that little bit of like just, you know,
major
euphoria,
confidence
like,
booster. Like the little things and the little wins add up. And just like you said, like the more little things and the more little wins that you do, the boosted confidence of that,
you're like,
along with the I'm
like,
awesome. Like, oh my god, I did that.
Look, I just made my bed. I'm the shit.
Acknowledge it because it's gonna build the momentum, but also build your confidence at the same time. And it's like this trifecta of just, all right, what more can we do? What more is possible?
Right. Exactly.
So it kind of opens the horizons of, well, shit. If that was something I never thought I could do before, just like you said. Could I do this? Could I do that?
And I think also, like you're saying too, like the energy and the momentum, like we all have had those days where we were like, wow, I was super productive today. Like, motherfucker, you could have been super productive every day. You just weren't. And it's because you got up and did something that gave you the energy and the sense of accomplishment to do the next thing, and you just went forth each time. That's what you're doing. It's like, I mean, I'm still good. What's crazy is I can sit here and talk about this stuff all day long, and then tomorrow I'm like, I'm going to put this frog. I'm going to put this frog over there on the plate.
What can I binge on Netflix today?
Let me stick this frog in the fridge for a little bit. No, but, you know, and that's it. Like, you know, it's just being aware of it, and then like again, it has to be what you want. Like if you don't want to go work on your list right now, that's okay too. Like it's okay.
That's
like,
I think one of the biggest issues is because everyone talks about those like macro things that you're supposed to be doing. Like this is how it's supposed to be. This is what you're supposed to be doing. Like that checklist. These are the things that you need to do, and it almost is like a duality to it. Like, yes, those certain things can help you become productive or do certain things that will help you improve, yada, yada, yada. But I think the component that everyone misses is the self-awareness. Every single person is going to be different. If every single person took the same exact path, you're going to get a million different results out of it because of the personal component. Like the things that motivate me are probably going to be different things that motivate you. The wins that I have, that I celebrate, that I'm like, yeah, that's fucking dope, are going to be different from the wins that make you feel that same way.
I hope so.
So, yeah, like I'm probably not going to be jacked up by getting in a pickup truck and going mudding, but somebody else might.
Right,
like
exactly.
somebody might have a total win going fishing and getting like that big rainbow fish.
I used to be the guy that would like talk, almost like talk down about it. Like I have a friend who hikes, right? And I actually have a few friends that like really go hiking all the time, right? And they came to me one time and they told me this story and they're like, yeah, we were up in, I think it was like Connecticut, and it had snowed like crazy. And they're like I was pretty sure that night I was going to die. And I'm like,
Fuck.
I don't want to go hiking. Like, you know what I mean?
That
and like,
sounds horrible.
for me, there's nothing about what they're doing that excites me, but on the flip side, I'm super happy for them. Like, I'm super happy for them that they're able to have a career that supports that and that they're able to go out and do what they love. I have a buddy right now who's going to be gone for 3 weeks hiking.
Wow.
And his business is going to run while he's gone.
Dope.
And I'm like that's the shit. I would never go hiking with you, buddy. But when you get back, let's hang out. Like it's not for me, right? So I'm not going to pursue it. I'm not going to, our whole lives. First of all, let's just talk about this for a second.
Yes.
Our whole fucking lives, we've been told this is what you have to do, right? What it should have been was, if you want this, then this is what you have to do. It should have never been, you have to do this, you have to go to school, you have to go to college, you have to, in order to be successful, you have to do these things. No. If you want X, you have to do Y. It's not, you have to do Y.
Yeah, and I literally just had this conversation, so I'm not even surprised it's coming up.
I'm listening.
I'm gonna get it. School has basically changed and been structured to teach you how to listen and follow other people.
100%.
At the simplest form. Because most of the stuff that you're learning in school will never be used again. And I think that's probably one of the saddest things about our education system.
Yeah.
Is
or you could have the information in seconds on your phone anyway. So what's the point?
Exactly.
Right.
I think everything is possible to be learned mostly on your own. I mean, if you need, teaching assistants and stuff, that's different. But what I'm saying is, like, the difference between how school is structured now and the things that are mandatory to learn, like,
it's antiquated.
I think it should be mandatory to an extent. I feel like by the time you get to, like, 16 years old, maybe the last year or two of high school should be choice-based, test-based.
Right.
Like, if you by then hate science and chemistry and you know that nothing in those fields, and you've learned the career paths that, if you go down the chemistry profession, these are the types of things that you could do. You could be a doctor, you could be a medical professional, you could be a aquamarine biologist, like
you could cook meth.
Yeah, Breaking Bad. Like,
I'm just kidding.
You can know the mostly what's kind of under the umbrella for the most part.
Yeah, exactly.
But I think they're missing so much about the openness of here's all the other possibilities that you can do and stuff. But
you said you were an athlete, right? So when you were a kid, what sports were you
Soccer.
into? Soccer. What else? Anything
Softball
else?
when I was a lot younger, but soccer was the one that I kind of dominated in.
Yeah. It is interesting, though, because what my example was going to be, like, where parents or coaches will try to put them in multiple sports. But shit, the NFL quarterbacks today are all, like, always being drafted as pitchers to the base in baseball.
I've been seeing that,
But one of the things that has, like, I saw this firsthand. Both my daughters were gymnasts and are now cheerleaders, but in gymnastics, they would make them compete at 4 different things, right? So it would be, like, they would have to compete at vault, they'd have to compete on the beam, bars, and floor, right? And, so if a gymnast came in and was, like, really good at floor or really good at beam, they still had to work on these other things, right?
Yeah.
Which I thought was a very bizarre idea, okay? But so be it. Then I learned that at the college level, they don't have to. They can compete at one thing. So we're training these athletes all the way up into the most important moment of their life where they have to work on all four. But once they get to the college level, they can focus on the one thing that they're great at, where they could have spent all that time, throughout all that time they were practicing all four skills. They could have focused on one and been twice as good at the college level.
Which
or
is
3
so
times or 4 times.
interesting. Because I think that's the college image that they portray when you're in high school, too. Because I remember when I was in high school, I couldn't wait for college to finally learn the things that I wanted to learn.
Yep.
And then you get to college and you pick that major, and then you find out, oh, wait, there's years of bullshit classes that you have to take for the requirements of getting that specific degree of bullshit. And maybe 2 semesters in total, maybe 3, are actually the things that you want to do. But you have to take 8 other semesters of just crap.
Yep.
And it's like, there's almost like a fine line of things that you should have to try, because maybe I never would have known that pottery was something that I wanted to do.
I use
or
pottery all the time as an
cooking.
example,
Do you
so
really?
I'm like laughing right now.
I'm not even surprised. The wavelength of like just total resonating with people. I've been speaking at the same exact moment, the same exact word sentence as other people that I had just met hours before, and this is happening to me all the time. So I'm not even surprised. Pottery.
Yeah, it works.
But yeah, like I think there's a fine line of try everything at least to an extent.
Sure. Yeah.
To figure out if you
Enough
like
to
it
know
or
if
not.
you have an interest in it, right?
Yeah, and maybe it takes more than one time to do
Yeah.
it. Like maybe it took me 3 soccer games to feel like, oh my God, I really love soccer. And then I think there's a difference between when you're growing up and then when you become more of like an adult in the age of like 18 to 22-ish, those college years. Again, you might have hated something in high school and then taken one class of an experience in college and been like, yo, I kind of really like that.
Yeah, that second experience
So
or the
I
third
think,
experience.
I think revisiting things throughout time also is something that can help.
Yeah, but
cultivate that.
going back to what you were saying about like the chemistry, right, and like biology or whatever, like what if the student is like super good at writing, right, and just like that's all they want to do. Now we've discouraged them, right, and we talk about the self-confidence. Like, what is that doing to that little boy or girl every single time? When I use the gymnastics example, like, okay, when somebody's great at floor and beam, we unfortunately have to pick on them for not being good at the bars or at vault, right? So it's like now instead of like promoting the pursuit of that passion, we're discouraging them, right? So that's a hit to self-confidence every single time. So now that's an impact. How many athletes that could have been better than any college athlete at that particular skill set
they were best at,
that stopped because they were impacted by their self-esteem and not being able to do the bars properly, right? And I think about that all the time because we talked about earlier, when I wanted to start my business and my father-in-law said, listen, you probably want to go the safer route. How many people, right, did that, had that conversation with their father-in-law and then never did it? And that is what scares the fuck out of me. That's why, like, that whole idea right there is why I'm doing this fucking podcast. Because, like, I want people to know the shit that I'm learning. I'm not an expert on this shit, but I'm learning some shit here. And, like, I want people to know that, like, there's a ton of opportunity on the other side of that comfort zone. Like,
so much.
Like, where you're comfortable at right now in that bubble, like, I promise you, that's not where happiness is. That's not where success is. That's not where what you actually want is. Like, what you actually want is on the other side of that. You have to get out of your comfort zone. You have to fall in love with yourself. You have to have enough confidence to take that little bit of a chance or that little bit of a leap to just go after what you truly want to get, have, and or accomplish. Like, that's it. Like, that's what, like, this whole episode today especially was about. But this podcast in general, like, I always want people to see that, like, there's an opportunity past their current self-limiting beliefs. One question that I always ask every guest on our podcast is, so the name of the podcast obviously is the Extra Mile Podcast. I named it that because, like, going the extra mile for certain things, like, so an example is I when I got out of jail, yes, I was in jail. And if you don't know
I
my
need to
story,
hear more about your story.
My story's crazy, girl. But anyway, in order to get a job, like I was like, man, the cards are stacked against me. I had multiple convictions. I'm like, in order to get a job, I've got to do something bold, right? So I put on a suit that didn't fit me. It was my cousin's suit. It was too big. And I was about a month released from prison at this time. I got a haircut from a friend, and I started showing up to places and said, I'm here for my interview. I didn't say, are you hiring? I didn't ask for an application. I showed up and I said, I'm here for my interview, right? And that's how I got my first job coming out of jail. I mean, people looked at me like I was crazy, but guess what? Now I was operating with an extreme level of self-love, gratitude. Like I had this miracle set me free and like bless me. I owed whatever miracle, whatever energy produced it, like the best version of me. So I didn't care that the first couple of places I went to were like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, you don't have an interview. I didn't care what they thought because I was there for my interview and I scheduled my interview. They just didn't know. You know what I mean? So anyway, that was my example of like going the extra mile. Like, do you have like moments in your life where you think like going the extra mile, whether it be, and again, this doesn't have to be career based. This can be just off of what you want, like your pursuit of, or your journey, right? Of your life. Was there a time where you think like going the extra mile, like just really kind of made something happen for you, come forth for you, or?
I think every time that I've dedicated and just gone even further and extra, there has never been anything negative to come out of it. If anything, it's just gone way deeper. Like I went way further ahead than I thought was even possible, which is again a huge booster of confidence. Or if it ended up flopping, again, I don't see anything really from a negative perspective. So for me, my latest thing's always been, well,
yeah, you guys hearing that motorcycle outside? We're raw and uncut right here.
But I think for me, if it didn't go quite how I expected, I just look at it as, what's the lesson? Yeah. Like, what's the lesson? All right, that didn't go quite right. That actually really sucked. But there's something bigger and better out there for me. Like, I definitely have that belief where whatever that thing is that I know I'll do one day, which still very unclear on, and maybe I'll never be clear on it.
Taylor, you're having fun, like, and that's I was
exactly
gonna say, like,
it.
That's it. You know, to me, like, from the outside looking in, and maybe like that's what we're talking about, like you going the extra mile by way of what you owe yourself, like this self-love, this conversation that we're having, like I don't know, that's why I said it was a perfect topic for us to discuss, because girl, you're fucking doing it, like, and I love watching it. I know your followers love watching it, but it's authentic. We see the smile, right? And we like the smile. So like that's it, like that's what we're after. Gosh, man, like it's that simple. It's just that simple. It really
is. And I think that's the fun thing for me is I like to keep things simple. I like to simplify things, and I like to just do what makes me happy and feels good. And only through like self-love and confidence and transitioning, you know, kind of in that way, mindset wise, it is quite literally all I'm supposed to do. Yeah. It's very interesting since Bali. Had some really wild experiences. But my intuition tells me, like, the purpose of my life is literally to have fun. Like, you do you. You go after whatever it is that you want. You got $5,000 in your bank account and you want to go backpacking in Europe for a couple of months just because, why the fuck not? That's what I'm going to do. Because that is an experience that will be part of my journey, that I'm going to learn something from it anyway. That's 100%. Probably way more valuable than if I went back to school or had another certificate or tried a different job. Like, for me, and again, might not be something you want to do, kind of a thing.
This is about self-awareness.
This is why self-awareness is the core of what I'm going to be preaching a lot more on lately. But it's quite literally direction pivoting
Yeah.
Like, it changes the whole game. And I'm going to live in that authentic space where I'm going to just do what makes me happy. I'm not, being negative or bad towards anyone else. My intentions are all good. I'm not hurting anybody.
Nope, absolutely.
Why wouldn't I do that?
100%. Yeah. And that's it. Like, the people that have something to say about that are just upset that they can't do that.
Exactly.
And also, right, double conjunction, but okay. What it is like people get really uncomfortable with the idea that what they thought was not possible is indeed possible, right? So when they see you doing what they believe can't be done, right, it's going to breed that little bit of anger and frustration when you really just want them to understand the realization of it and say, hey, you can do this too.
Exactly.
If it's what you want, right?
Exactly.
And what you're after. So, and the other thing is, girl, you're young. The opportunities are going to offer your energy, offer your happiness, offer your positivity, offer the way that you view life. The opportunities are going to attract to you.
Yeah.
That's how that works. My friend who was divorced at like 40 started his business at 43, and he's one of the happiest people I know today, and
That's
one of the
awesome.
most successful people I know today.
That's
and he didn't even
awesome.
start his business until he was 43 years old.
See, that's the thing that messes people up, is their age or the cultural norms.
Right.
Like, you should be married and have kids before 30 or before 40.
No. You should.
Yeah.
No. If I want,
Yes.
why?
That
I
is why
should.
everyone's path is so different, and that comparing yourselves to others is only going to hinder your self-awareness.
Right.
It's going to hinder your confidence.
Right.
It's going to, if anything, make you envious, jealous, low confidence, hateful, negative. Like, it's the core of literally, it's the first thing I dropped, to be honest, to go on the path of everything
that comparing,
self-awareness.
that just doesn't work at all.
Literally, I had to be like, there is no North Star right now that I know.
Right.
So I'm going to figure out my North Star because I don't know what to do.
There's nothing wrong with that.
And I think a lot of people are afraid to go on that journey because it's full of just unknown.
Yeah.
And most people stick with certainty, what they do know, because that's where the comfort level is.
Yep. And where
Again,
their insecurities are.
happiness is on the other side of your comfort level.
100%.
The uncertainty is quite literally where all the opportunity is. That's why most people are going to live that structured life that was kind of planned out for them because their own fear holds them back from the thing that they were actually born to do, which is sad.
Yeah.
And I feel for those people, but I also can't relate.
Yeah, there's a story, and it's about this older lady. Her name, they call her Grandma Moses, okay? This is a true story, right?
Okay.
It's a lady who was a farmer her whole life, okay? But when she was a kid, she really liked to paint. She loved painting, right? But the farm needed her help. So she worked the farm for years and years and years until she got old and couldn't work the farm anymore. So once she got to this point where she couldn't work the farm anymore, she started painting again. And one painting that she started, when she started painting, one of the paintings ended up selling for like $500,000, more than she had ever made in her entire life working the farm. And she went on to be a very well-known painter for that reason and had several paintings go for hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Wow.
Now, here you have this passion and this want. Guys, don't let that happen to you. Like, we can get to the point where we're just giving them some advice now because, guys, and again, this isn't from a place of, like, expertise. I'm not a doctor in self-love and self-confidence, but I can tell you this. Like, if you're at all stopped by your self-limiting beliefs, if you think that you can't do something because of information that has been instilled in you, I would say challenge that information, challenge your thoughts, challenge those beliefs, and really dive deep into a place where what you want to do versus what you're doing and where that is. Because, if you can see it and you can make that move, you're not going to regret it. You're just not going to regret it.
Literally, I could not agree on that more. It's funny because perspective is quite literally the easiest thing for when someone switches their perspective, everything in their life can also course correct in that different direction.
Absolutely.
And then mix that with a little belief. And then what is there left to hold you back other than cutting out people's opinions of you too? But there is nothing more depressing or that will put you into depression than living a life that you don't want. And it's literally heartbreaking. And even just for myself, anytime that I wake up and I'm like, what am I doing? Like, I'm pretty sure many people probably have that moment of waking up, blink, 30, 40, 50, 60 years old.
Right.
And they're like, what am I doing?
Right.
Like,
but if you have a clue of that, if you have a hint that that's you right now, don't wait till you're 50.
Yeah.
Like, don't wait till that moment, because you can't go back and do it.
Yeah.
I would say, guys, like, you know, fall in love with yourself right now, today. Like, look at you in the mirror and just fall in love with who you are, because, you know, you've got everything within you right now to do and accomplish everything that you want to set out and accomplish. It's in you right now. Just fall in love with yourself and go after it.
And if you can't fall in love with yourself right now, because that just seems a little too far-fetched for you, fall in love with something. Fall in love with painting. Fall in love with cooking. Fall in love with reading books.
Great
fall
advice.
in love
Great advice.
with literally falling in love. Like, if you just find something that lights you up, that is also part of the potential path you can take towards self-love.
100%.
And I think that's a
100%.
huge thing that people miss, because my path to self-love was not me just waking up one day, looking in the mirror and being like, I love myself.
No.
Not at all.
No, it's
not at all.
But it's unfortunate because a lot of people have to, like, that those miracle moments that, you know, let's face it, don't happen for everybody, right? You know, I speak at detention centers a lot to like kids that are, you know, having some trouble and at-risk youth and stuff like that. And I'm like, listen, a miracle came from me. A miracle is not coming for you, which means you have to change your thoughts and behaviors without this triggering moment in your life, right? And that's where we're at. Like, especially when you've had these like breakthroughs, and you see like the common behavior of the people that haven't had those breakthroughs. It's like you don't wish that on them, because a lot of times that breakthrough's got some kind of negative connection to it, but still, like, you want to like grab them and like shake them a little bit and say, hey, listen, man, this applies to you too. Like, the gratitude, the self-love, like the idea that you can operate with gratitude, self-love, self-confidence, the discipline that goes along with all that, man. It's just, it's one of those things. You guys owe it to yourselves. You just truly do.
The only thing you need, honestly, is the belief that there is something greater for your life. If you don't have that, then that's the first thing you need to change. Like, there is no other first step other than that. Believe that something else is going to be greater for you, or that you can live a better life, you can live a happier life, you can live with more passion. Like, you're not stuck where you are at all, because the path to then get there, as long as that belief is there, and you're going to have excuses, you're going to have limiting beliefs, like, those are going to come up.
100%,
That's the human part of us.
Just remember, when they come, just get them out of there. Like, you know they're going to come. Just be prepared. Like, all right. We would talk all day.
I think so.
And we'll do an episode 2, even if we got to do it remotely.
That's fine. I'm cool with that.
Taylor came all the way down from Buffalo, and I'm just blessed to have her here with us. If you could, please give them some ways to follow you on social media so that they can get some of your daily insights as well, please.
Main platform's Instagram right now. Hoping to restart my YouTube soon. But The Fabulous Journey. So at The Fabulous Journey on Instagram, and then everything else will kind of be found from there.
Awesome. So guys, over there on TikTok, make sure you get over to her Instagram and follow her there. It's you know, that time. We're about to close up, guys. So do you have any last thoughts for anybody out there on what we just chatted about?
I don't think so. I'm probably gonna check
did you
out
want
my...
to? Did you want to see if we have some questions?
Yeah, I'm gonna check out
Okay.
the Instagram live,
We've got-
because I see comments kind of flowing through.
Okay, let's see where we're at with
I might
that.
have a couple I can scroll back through them too, though.
Okay,
But
I like it. You're all right.
we'll kind of just do that over
There
there.
we go. I'll back up a little bit and you can come closer.
Can't with the background noises, somebody said. What is that noise? That's funny.
Was it the motorcycle?
It must have been like forever ago.
Yeah, those are my friends next door riding bikes.
That's funny.
I don't ride a bike anymore, so.
Yeah, if anyone has questions, throw them in the chat. I think most people watched at the beginning, kind of hopping and off.
Yeah. No,
That's cool.
Yeah, no, it was a really good conversation. No, I think we really hit the nail on the head on a lot of that stuff.
Yeah.
So, guys, listen, make sure you guys go and follow Taylor. Check us out next time on episode 15 of the Extra Mile podcast. And, make sure you guys comment, message, certain topics that you want us to discuss on the Extra Mile podcast, because you can go the extra mile with a lot of things. So I really want to make sure that I'm getting you guys the discussions and conversations and finding the experts on them to really dive deep into those conversations. Yes, you're an expert, girl.
I was going to say what?
All right, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll catch you guys next time.